All right, so in this exercise, we're going to show you how an agent can go into their MLS. If you happen to be an agent, you can actually get tools like this and other tools at investoragent.com. But once you're in the MLS, you can actually pull some data, and it only takes you like 2 minutes to figure out what inventory is looking like right now. So you can get a really good pulse on not just a snapshot of what it looks like today, but if you do this on a weekly basis, and we typically do this on Thursdays, if you do this on a weekly basis, you can see on your MLS how the inventory is kind of trending and how it's moving. And that's more, that dynamic picture is way more relevant than just what you can see on one day, because you want to see where the puck is moving, right? To use Wayne Gretzky's quote. So when we go in the MLS, literally once a week, we kind of take a quick pulse on what's happening in the market. And by tracking housing inventory, you take into account all the factors at play in the supply and demand on how fast housing is being absorbed in your particular market, okay, on your particular MLS, because we're pulling all the data on your local MLS, all right? So this template right here, the first thing we want to do, and you'll see basically 2 steps, and then the template does everything for us. You can recreate this on your own, by the way. It's very easy to do that. But all we're doing is we're seeing, number one, is how many active listings are there on the MLS right now? And then we put that number right here. You can do a quick search on your MLS. I'll show you how I do that in a second. And then the second thing we're doing is we're trying to find out what is the sales pace every single month. Like how many properties are closing every single month, so we can kind of see how long it's going to take for that active listing number to be absorbed. So I'll give you a quick example. If you have 40 active listings on your MLS, to use super simple numbers, and you are closing on average 10 houses per month. Well, if you take those 40 active listings and you don't add one more listing to the MLS or to the market, then it's going to take you at a pace of 10 closings a month, 4 months to absorb that inventory. So in that situation, you'd have 4 months of inventory. So if you're in real estate, you know that anything less than about 5 or 6 months of inventory, you're in more of a seller's market where you have more demand than there are properties. And on the opposite side of that equation, if you have more than about 7 months of inventory, you're in more of a buyer's market and things are a little bit slower. So what we're seeing right now, and what we've seen in recent history in most markets across the United States, is we've been in an extreme seller's market where days on market is being compressed, so properties aren't lasting very long. You're starting to see multiple offer scenarios, and then in a lot of extreme cases, you even see appraisal rider waivers. So that's kind of what we've been seeing in our market, and we've been trending at about 3 weeks of inventory. It's about as extreme as it can get. We've seen some markets across the country with about 2 weeks of inventory, but not really less than that, because you can't really have less than 2 weeks of inventory. But that's kind of like the extreme. So what we're trying to gauge here is, we know that there's a foreclosure crisis on the horizon. We know that we're in a major asset bubble. Granted, everybody has more equity in their houses now. We understand that. We don't see what happened in 2008, where you had a mortgage crisis that was created because we were overextending loans and it was easy money. This one isn't going to be caused by easy money. It's going to be caused because of a monetary and fiscal problem that we have, and an asset bubble that is all over the globe, that if that pops, then we're going to start to see that trickle down to interest rates. That would affect home prices, and that's also going to affect everybody's buying power, because all their savings is going to be eroded if an asset bubble pops, right? Or their wealth is going to be eroded. So you're going to see a lot less buyers and a lot less purchasing of the higher end houses. So anyway, it's not going to be caused by the same thing. We have a different situation. But if we want to kind of gauge where we are on the horizon, or where that is on the horizon potentially, we want to see how inventory is tracking. So this is our best way to gauge this. And like I said, we do this once a week to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening in the market. So when it's on top of us, we're not surprised by it, okay? We'll see it coming. So the way you do this is, the first thing we're going to calculate here is we need to pull from our MLS, and it only takes us 1 to 2 minutes to do this, how many active listings are on the MLS right now. Then once we have that number, how many active listings are on the MLS, we're going to look at how many closings we had each week for just the last 3 weeks, so we can get a nice little sampling on how we're trending. And by getting the closings each week for the last 3 weeks, we can then say, okay, if there's on average about 4.2 weeks in a month, and we know that we're averaging this many a week, then that means we're closing this many per month, okay? And then we can divide that number into how many active listings we have, and that shows us our inventory number, right? So this is what you want to plot out first, is the dates for each week, and you can do this on your own or off of the absorption tool here, because this does all the math for you, so you don't have to do it manually. But you can go to, you plot in each week for the last 3 weeks, and then we go into the MLS and pull a quick real estate search on how many closings we had for each one of those weeks. So let me show you how I do this very quickly in the MLS, right? I'm just going to pull my MLS up. So if I go to my MLS and I just do a quick real estate search, whoops. I'm just going to do a quick residential search here. And the first thing it shows is the default. As soon as I go into a search, it's going to show all the active listings. So the first number I need, because it's over 5,000, I got to click this in my MLS, and I'm using Stellar. It says that I have about 14,451 properties on the market, right? So I would just go into my sheet, 14,451 active listings on the market, right? Then when I go back to my sheet, now I want to revise my search, uncheck active listings. I just want to see closings now, what's sold. And the first search I'll do is the last 7 days. So 0 to 7 days. And it shows me my number right down here on the bottom, 3622. Then I want to do 8 to 14 days. That's the next weekly period before the last 7 days. That's 3,065. And then I'm going to do 15 days to 21 days. And that's a 7-day period, 3 weeks out. Now it says on that particular week, and that, by the way, the last week of your month is always going to be higher because there's a lot of closings the last week of the month, and that happened to be the last week of last month. So if I click on that link down there, it shows me there was actually 5,953. So that's all you need to do, and then the sheet does everything for you. So when you have those 3 inputs for the closings each week, the last 3 weeks, you can just take an average of them. If you don't have this sheet, it's pretty simple. Just average those 3 out. So they add up to a certain number. I divide that by 3, and that gives me 4,213 closings per week is what we're averaging. If I take that times an average month of 4.2 weeks in the month, then I get just under 18,000 closings per month. Now, remember, we had 14,451 closing or active listings. So we're actually closing more properties in this particular market on this MLS than we have available at any given time. Now, I can tell you that once you start doing this a while, you'll know what your inventory looks like just based on what your closings are and what your active listings are, because you've been doing this every week and you've been tracking, and you have a really good feel for how many closings you're seeing a week, right? So once you kind of see where we are with active listings at any given time, you automatically know, okay, is it cooling off? Is it heating up? Have we turned a corner? Are we maybe in front of a correction? It could just be that we're at the end of the summer, right? And that's probably most likely the case. But it's a data point that's really nice to have in your back pocket. And then if you want to publish this on your social media, it becomes really handy. As an agent, we picked up a lot of investors or people who look at the market with a more sophisticated lens, and these are your high net worth clients that will turn into investors. And if you're publishing information like this that's a little bit unique, then you're going to get private message, and or you're going to engage people that wouldn't normally engage on just a picture, for example, staying in front of a sold sign or at the closing table with some clients, right? So we work with a lot of agents that work with investors specifically, and this is one of the bits of information or value we always encourage agents to publish, because it takes you just literally 2 minutes to do, and it gives you really good intel about what's happening in the market. So I can tell you that this change from last week, it got a little bit slower. We've been sitting in my particular market in Central Florida on this MLS at about 0.7 weeks for literally the last couple months now. It hasn't really changed, but this is the first time it actually went from 0.7 to 0.8. So I'll continue to watch this to see if that's just a trend, if it's just because we're in the end of the summer, or if it actually heats up again. But this is how we keep pulse on all the factors, again, that play into supply and demand and what our housing inventory looks like in our particular market, because as you know, that looks different in any market across the country.